as consumer responsiveness increases, the price elasticity also increases. Let's look at what happens if the change in price, it's called percentage change in price, is 1%. That might make the percentage change in quantity demanded be maybe minus 2%, or if consumers are more responsive, the percentage change in quantity might equal minus 3%. So minus 2% is more responsive because it's a bigger decrease. Well, if the percentage change in quantity is minus 2%, that means that our elasticity, the absolute value of the elasticity, will equal 2. If they become more responsive and the quantity falls by 3%, that's going to make the absolute value of the elasticity equal 3. So as responsiveness increases, the absolute value of the price elasticity demand also increases. Economists and business people often talk about whether the demand is more or less elastic than another one. What's the difference between more and less elastic? We're going to be talking about the absolute value of E, the absolute value of the price elasticity demand. That number is going to be some value between 0 and any number in the number line all the way up to infinity. Okay? More elastic means that we're moving towards infinity. More elastic. And less elastic means we're moving towards 0. Let's do a couple quick examples. Absolute value of E equals 3 is more elastic than when absolute value of E is equal to 2, because 3 is closer to infinity than 2 is. Similarly, absolute value of E is equal to 0.8 is more elastic than absolute value of E is equal to 0.4, because 0.8 is closer to infinity than 0.4. We could also say that 0.4 is less elastic than 0.8, and that 2 is less elastic than 3. Finally, more elastic is the same as less inelastic. And less elastic is the same as more inelastic. So 0.4 is more inelastic than 0.8, and 2 is more inelastic than 3. Now, whether the extent to which demand is elastic or more elastic, less elastic, depends upon 4 primary characteristics. The first is the extent to which the good has few or many close substitutes, or how close substitutes are. The demand tends to be less elastic when there are few close substitutes, and the demand tends to be more elastic when many close substitutes exist. For example, consumers are more responsive to changes in price for the latest version of the iPhone when Android introduces a close substitute into the market, because consumers have an easier time moving away from the iPad to the new similar Android. Goods that are necessities tend to be less elastic. Goods that are luxuries tend to have more elastic demands. Think about it. If you need something, it's hard to move away from it. If it's a luxury, you can do without it, and doing without is always a possible substitute for the product. The demand for milk, for example, is less elastic than the demand for furs. Milk is a necessity. Furs are generally viewed as a luxury. The product is less elastic when it's more broadly defined and more elastic when it's more narrowly defined. Let me give you an example. Broadly defined product would be soft drinks. A narrowly defined product would be Coca-Cola. The demand for Coca-Cola is more elastic because consumers have an easier time substituting another cola drink or another soft drink for Coca-Cola than they do substituting a soft drink for something else. Orange juice and soft drinks are substitutes, but they're not nearly as close substitutes as Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola are. And finally, demand tends to be less elastic when consumers have little time to respond to a change in price, and they tend to be more elastic when consumers have much time to respond to a change in price. The demand for gasoline when consumers have 1 month to respond to change in price is less elastic than the demand when consumers have a year to respond, because they have more time to respond to the price change and they can do more things. In a month, you're not going to move to be closer to your job. In a year, you might. In a month, you're probably going to run out and buy a new fuel-efficient car where the price of gasoline rises. In a year, you might.